You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous. Her loyalty is only to the family she serves. She will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change, who are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating a space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were born wild. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. I'm your host, Sophia, and today I have with me Elizabeth. Will you introduce yourself to the listeners?
Sure. My name is Elizabeth, as Sophia just said. We just had our first baby a couple months ago. She just turned 4 months old, and I grew up in Michigan. I had always kind of been in the holistic health space from when I was very young because my parents actually raised our whole family vegan. They kind of decided to do that, I guess, over 30 years ago, looking for something that would be a healthier alternative. And at that time, before there were all of these trends in the health space, that was kind of the direction they went. And so that's how we all grew up. And along with that, they were also always questioning just mainstream narratives around health and raising children. In a lot of different areas. So I had that background. And then after I finished high school, I moved to New York City. I lived in New York City for 7 years. That's where I went to college. And then I started teaching a middle school in New York City after I graduated. And at the same time, through all those 7 years, I was also doing ballet, which I had grown up doing and then continued in college and then was continuing here and there even after college as well, doing different performances in New York City and things like that. Then in 2020, I moved to California. Right in the middle of COVID, I moved in July 2020.
Oh,
so
wow.
Everything was like really shut down and it was a really big change. But it was interesting because I had experienced the entire beginning of the pandemic in New York City, where it was one of the craziest spots for it. So that was really interesting.
Why did you move to California?
While I was in New York, I had reconnected with a friend from high school, Andrew. We were friends in high school and then had kind of lost touch during college. And then we started talking again after college. And so I had been flying back and forth for a couple years before I actually moved. But then that's the reason why I moved to California. So that was in 2020. And then started teaching at a high school. So moved from middle school to high school, but still teaching in California and got married in 2024. And then Jane was born almost exactly 1 year after our wedding in 2025. There were so many days leading up to her being born where we were thinking this would be a really fun day. She was born on this day. Our anniversary is the 10th. And then our dog's birthday is the 14th, which is also Valentine's Day. And that's when she ended up being born. I also thought the 5th would be cool because then that's like 2/5/2025 birthday. So I was like all these different dates leading up, but it ended up being very fun. Valentine's Day and Abby's birthday.
Well, when did you know you wanted to be a mother? You said all of us, so it sounds like you have siblings. Did you like always want to be a mom? Like, where did your pregnancy journey begin? Like your trip into parenthood?
Yeah, I'm the oldest of 6 children in my family. And another example of my parents kind of going a little bit off mainstream, we were all homeschooled until 9th grade, most of us, and some of us even longer than 9th grade. So,
And then you ended up being a teacher.
that's right. Yeah, and my mom was a teacher and my grandma was a teacher. There's
Oh.
a lot of like following
Yeah.
in the family. Yeah. And so being the oldest of 6, there were always young children and babies around in the house. And then being at home, being homeschooled, you get to see a lot of it, right? So I was always around my younger siblings and it was really fun helping out with them. And also it was really nice seeing my mom, how she was able to do such a great job raising 6 kids, teaching them, managing the house. And so that was really great. That was a really great experience because I think it was such a good example for me and kind of was able to set me up for what I would envision later in my life.
Hmm.
I didn't envision liking teaching as much as I did.
Mm.
I first started. I knew it was going to be really fun when I first started, but it was kind of that type of thing where I was finishing college and like needed something to do after. I was actually still really thinking, well, maybe I can keep doing ballet. So this was the teaching was sort of the means that I could keep doing ballet, and then I ended up liking it a lot more than I thought
Teaching was
that I
like
would.
your waitressing job as an actress or
Exactly.
something.
Exactly. Yes. And then I really liked it. So I kept going with it and knew that I wanted to have children as soon as we could after we got married, but didn't envision the kind of shift from teaching to being home with Jane
Mhm.
being such a big one.
Mhm.
So that was kind of interesting, realizing like this is what I always planned to do, this is what I always wanted to do, but it's still kind of a tricky transition.
Yeah, it's hard too because they're a baby for so long. Like I remember when my son turned a year, I thought he would be so much bigger or something. Like a year just sounds like so long, and I was like, he's still like really little. And the idea that like some moms are expected to go back to work full time at 6 weeks or something like that, like the baby is still so little.
Yes. Yeah. I think everything that you're saying is definitely so true. And then at the same time, in my head, I was always thinking, well, after she's born, it'll be really great. We just go back to teaching and then she'll be here and everything will work out pretty seamlessly. But didn't realize kind of the other side of what you're saying is that they do grow really fast as well in terms of they change so quickly. Like it seems like every
Like
day they're
missing out on
right. And so then realizing, wait a second, is it actually the best thing to go back, as soon as I can? Or would it be better to reevaluate and see, well, where can I cut back and where can I be home more? So it's definitely a tricky transition. And I think it's really hard because you can plan for it before the baby's born. But it seems like so much of your perspective also changes when your first baby is born. That
it.
almost like the planning that you did before, it's there, but it's almost not as valid anymore because you just were planning based on what you didn't really know and what you hadn't experienced yet. Yeah, there's a lot of like growing and shifting, and yeah, everything changes so quickly.
I feel like we kind of got ahead of ourselves. We're already postpartum.
I know, sorry.
Okay, let's go back.
Yeah.
You're pregnant, or even before pregnancy. Like, was it a long conception journey? Pretty straightforward. What was that like?
Yeah, so well, it's funny because I actually talked to you and Leah before I was even pregnant, just kind of doing research and figuring out, like I said, we definitely knew we wanted to have children as soon as we could after we got married. So I was already doing a lot of research at that time. That would have been, we got married in February. And then I think I talked to you and Leah in April. And then by the end of May, I emailed you guys and I was like,
Mhm.
I'm pregnant. So that was pretty quick. And then we just went right from there. And actually, you and Leah were the only midwives that I spoke with
Mhm.
because after we had that call, I was pretty clear on what I was looking for.
Mhm.
And then after we had spoken, it's like, okay, that pretty much fits every like criteria of what I had in my head that I wanted. So that was really nice too. Everything went really smoothly, especially
Yeah.
right at the
I
end.
remember after the interview, I was like, oh, I love someone who like plans ahead. Like you don't get many calls before somebody's pregnant, but we do occasionally. And I'm always
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, make a plan. I'm that same way.
Yeah. Well, especially if you feel very strongly about certain choices that you want to make.
Yeah.
I wanted to go
And so
into.
why home birth? It's not like super common. Like sometimes people fall into the like, well, for my first, let's just in case, then they either go hospital or birth center. But we do find it's becoming more and more popular with first-time moms. We are seeing it every year. We have more and more first-time moms. So like where did that conversation even come up? And like what was Andrew's thoughts on home birth?
Yeah, thankfully, he was really supportive of it right from the beginning. I had it in my head, maybe for about 10 years that I would definitely be interested in that. And I wonder if the increase that you're mentioning is tied at all to social media. I think it is much more visible because of
Mhm.
that, like, especially if you get in that little corner of social media where it's a very popular thing to do.
If you pause long enough on a video or a picture of home birth, then the search engine's like, oh, she wants more of that.
Exactly. And then it keeps going and going. And I was even I mentioned to you before we started recording, I was at a baby shower last week. And it was really interesting just sitting at a table with almost everybody who was about to have a baby or had just had a baby. And it was really interesting to hear that a lot of what they were talking about was less mainstream, like choosing different alternatives. And everyone was really excited and interested to talk about some of those different choices. Whereas I feel like maybe 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't so much the norm. So it definitely helps that it's becoming more visible. But I think that I had it in my head even a little bit before that, especially living in New York City and then now in California and seeing a lot of different regulations and laws and things that are being passed in these two states. When I lived in New York City, I was pretty involved in a few different advocacy groups around various things like school choice, like medical freedom, a lot of things that kind of end up all tying together, actually. And so I was hearing a lot of stories through doing that work. And then knowing that California is similar, I just didn't want that worry or that pressure of being in a hospital and then all of a sudden like something's going a little different than what you thought and you don't feel as though you really have the ability to in that moment where things might be moving quickly or whatever make the decision that you actually wanted to make. So I think that was the impetus behind it for me. And I had mentioned it to Andrew, I think in a conversation probably in like 2019, so a long time ago. And I think probably at the first mention, it was maybe a little bit surprising. But then I think by the time we got to the point of being ready to actually like make those decisions and go to appointments with you and Leah, it was much more of like a approachable idea. And I also think the last piece of it is that with the pandemic, I think it did cause a lot of like shifts in people's minds around just medical care in general. And that probably made things even easier too.
Yeah, we definitely saw an uptick after COVID. Okay, so you're pregnant. What was your pregnancy like? Was it pretty smooth and straightforward? Were there any complications? Like, what did you need in your pregnancy to feel safe?
It was really great. It actually timing we didn't really plan for this at all, but it worked out that I actually found out um that I was pregnant day, the last day of school. So that was really nice because I remember just like, so that was like a Friday. And then even that weekend, and then especially like the Monday of realizing, like, okay, I don't have school, it's summer. I can really take a lot of time to just do whatever I need to do. And so that was really nice because there was a lot less pressure just being off of school for that whole time. So
I was gonna say,
I
say the first trimester where if you're not gonna
I
feel so good, it might be then.
Right, exactly. And I never was sick at all the whole time actually until until she was being born. And then I was sick the whole time. So I made up for all the while she was being born. But for the whole first trimester, the only thing I really noticed was being tired. Other than that, in terms of like appetite and nausea and all of the things that you usually hear people talking about, I didn't really experience that at all. I remember at one of my appointments, Leah asked, like, how are you doing? What have you been eating? And I told her I was drinking a lot of green juices. And she was like, wow, that's great. Most people would not be wanting to drink green juices, but if you can, that's great. So it was very, very easy overall for me. I did do a lot of um, like workout classes
Mhm.
because I had so much time in the summer and because I was feeling good. Uh, for me at least, doing those, I think the more that I kept doing them, the better I kept feeling. So it was kind of like all sort of related, which was really nice. The only small little blip that I had was I think it was an appointment with you, and I was telling you for like a 3-day period right around Christmas. So she was born early February, so that's like pretty close to her being born. Something happened with like a nerve in my leg or something that was like shooting down and I could not walk. It was so weird. It started all at once and it lasted for 3 days and it went away all at once. But I remember feeling at that time like, oh no, is this going to continue weeks? Like, am I not going to be able to walk for 8 weeks? So that was the only thing. And it did get very like demoralizing for those 3 days, just because I think I was working myself up to think like, oh, this is not going away. This is
Yeah,
going to
because day
continue.
one, these things happen. Day two, like could be a fluke. Day three, you're like, this is my new life.
Right,
And it
exactly.
just resolved on its own, or was there anything you felt like made a difference?
I was doing so much.
Yeah.
It was kind of the thing where I was like doing everything. Like I was foam rolling, I was stretching, I was doing like the cupping, like I was doing everything I could think of doing, icing, heating. And so who knows? I mean, it could have been something, or it could have been that she just moved. I really have no idea, but I'm very glad that that resolved. And then other than that, like I was feeling great the whole time, all the way until the end. So
Yeah, good.
yeah.
Well, lead us into the birth. How did that start?
Yeah. So we had adjusted, I think, her due date, and moved it 1 week back. But of course, in my head, I still had the original one. It's kind
Mhm.
of hard to not think about that one.
Yeah.
So that
We
that was
we had your due date based off an ultrasound.
that's right. And so when we did that, because we did one ultrasound at 20 weeks,
Hmm.
and then we shifted the date 1 week. Anyway, I had originally been thinking February 5th, and then
Hmm.
that day came and went. And then the new day that we had adjusted it to was the 12th.
Hmm.
Um, and then, like I said earlier, we had been thinking of all of these like fun days. So like the 10th was our anniversary, and we're like, well, maybe it'll be that day. And then it wasn't. And at this point, Andrew was on leave already from work, and I was already off of school. So we were kind of just sitting around,
Hmm.
um, wondering what was going to happen. And finally, one night we were just relaxing. We had been going to bed so early. I think we had been going to bed at about like 7:15 every night. Uh, I guess we were tired and we didn't really have anything else to do. I think both of us were kind of shocked by not having anything to do. Both of our personalities are to stay super busy. So we were kind of just
You're
looking
like,
at
we
each
might as well sleep.
Yeah, so we were going to bed so early. And then one night we were just getting ready for bed, and we have a big St. Bernard Abbey who was very present the whole birth. And she likes to sleep on the bed with us. And we had been trying to kind of ease her into a crate so that obviously when the baby's here, she's not like jumping up on the bed. But I had said, like, she looks really sad. Like, let's just see if she wants to come up on the bed for a little bit. And she jumped up and she was kind of doing her like circling to find a good spot and plopped down. And right as she plopped down, my water broke. So she actually kind of was like the impetus for the whole thing, which was really funny. And so I was like, oh, wow, okay, like I think the baby's going to be born. And so we were getting really excited, and everything was very like low stress. It was just kind of like, okay, the time is here. So Andrew called Leah, or he called the on-call line, and Leah
Hmm.
was answered. And Leah said, you're doing great. Just this was about like 8 p.m. by the time he called her. And she said, well, we'll just like touch base in the morning unless you need something. And so we were just kind of hanging out. It was not really like anything crazy was happening. And I don't think we really slept that much, but we were just sort of kind of relaxing. And then in the morning, Leah was gonna come down and Carissa was with her. And also, I had last second found someone on Instagram, Amber. Maybe we can put her,
Tag her.
yeah, her website because she's like amazing. She was one of the really wonderful surprises of the whole thing. I had booked her to come and take photos, but I had done it so last minute that I had never met her prior. It was one of those things where like in the middle of the night, I was thinking like, oh, I think I want to like reach out to this person. I just found her. But I never met her. So she also came in the morning and it was still going great. And maybe around, I'm not sure if I'm going to have all the times right, but it might have been like around 10 a.m. in the morning. Leah said, okay, I think she's going to be born like any minute. So she was giving Andrew the instructions, like, here's what you do when she's born. And we were like getting really excited. And I remember in my head thinking, like, wow, this was so easy. Like, great, I could do this any day. This is no problem at all. And so I was like really ready to go. And we had gotten a birth like tub and we had that set up in that nursery room, actually, the room that was going to become her room. And so we were just like ready for her to be born. And then after a little bit, she was not born. So Leah said, okay, let's like take a little break. Why don't we get out? Because she
And
was
were
saying
you
like,
pushing or were contractions just like really close together and strong?
I think a little bit of both.
Mhm.
A little bit of both. As we'll kind of find out later, with all of like the lower back pain that I was having, I feel like it was all sort of just blending
Yeah, yeah,
together. So I think it was hard for me to like differentiate between the two,
yeah.
especially as we like kept going. But I think it was definitely like a little bit of both at that time. And so Leah said, I don't want you to get really tired, so why don't we just get out and we'll like try something else. And then one thing I forgot to mention is the only real like not traumatic, but the only real like big thing that had happened over the night was that I kept throwing up. And so anytime I would like take a sip of something or eat something, I would throw up immediately. And so I think that was kind of like a factor too, because it had then been, over 12 hours since I had eaten anything. And she was saying,
Mhm.
like, I don't want you to get too tired. So let's just like take a break. Then fast forward, we're taking our break for a long time, all the way to that night. Nothing had really been happening
Mhm.
for that whole time. And so
Do you
at
mean
that,
contractions had stopped or like no progress, no change, nothing?
no progress. They
Okay.
were going the whole time, but no progress. Yeah. So then when it's like getting to be nighttime, Leah said, I think we should kind of like evaluate where we're at. Um, and she said, I really think you should try to get some rest. And she suggested having a Benadryl to kind of slow everything so that I could sleep for a little while. Because at this point, it's now been 24 hours since I've eaten anything or really had like a rest. So I had actually never had Benadryl before, like in my whole life.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, hopefully everything's okay with that. But I figured that would probably be all right. So Andrew ran, we didn't have any, like
That
ran to
makes
the,
sense.
yeah, and got some. And that was good because I was able to rest. And I think I even slept for a couple hours, kind of like a weird sort of sleep, but sleeping. And right before I went to sleep, and this was another wonderful part, I think, about having you and Leah, is I definitely really appreciated how you presented everything throughout the whole process. I think that both of you are very intuitive about like what information is like need to know information and what information is not need to know information, like having the patient's best interests in mind,
Mhm.
obviously. So at that time, Leah knew that I was only at 4 centimeters,
Because she had
but
offered to check you but didn't tell you.
right.
And
She
you guys
said,
had agreed on that. Yeah.
right. Yeah, exactly. She had definitely like asked, like, are you okay? Like, do you want me, it's been 24 hours. Like, do you want to kind of see what's going on? And so she knew that, but she didn't tell me that, which I'm actually really grateful for.
Mhm.
She said something like, you still have a little ways to go, or something like that.
Which is
But
true.
right. Exactly. It was true. But I think if she would have said that, then I would have been like, oh no, it's
Yeah.
been 20. hours for this much, like, does that mean we now like 72 more hours? Like, what am I gonna do? So that was really smart. I slept for a little bit and then wasn't really able to sleep after a while. And so I just got back in the tub because the water is really nice, having like warm water. And poor Carissa was like refilling that with hot water so many times because I just like couldn't get it warm enough. It was like
It's our workout, like bailing water.
Exactly. She bailed that thing. So, but it was really nice. And then I believe at that time had a B12 IV, or maybe like as the morning was sort of like approaching to get a boost of energy, which was also really nice because I still hadn't eaten. I was able to have like some water and I had like a few bites of like honey and things like that, but coconut water. But that was really it. So it was really nice to have the option of getting the B12 because I felt really re-energized after that. And then at around like 9 o'clock, that's when Leah said, okay, I'm going to go and Sophia and Sarah are going to come and we're going to switch. And I like knew in my head that that's what was going to happen, obviously. But I just remember being like, man, we're going to be like starting over again.
Yeah.
Like all of this like starting over that was going on, And actually right before, so she had told me that, and then she was like, so we can just like see where you're at before Sophia gets here and kind of like gauge what happened during the night. And then at that time she said, wow, like I'm so amazed. You're now 10 centimeters. She's going to be born any minute. And so I was like, so in my head, I was like, okay, she's going to be born before Sophia gets here, because I'm just like, trying to, like get my.
Well, yeah, because I, would get up because I knew you were in labor before I went to bed that night. And so we always like stalk the chart. We're like, refresh, refresh, refresh. And so I saw that what seemed like you were pushing, and then all of a sudden she checked you and I could read where you were at. And I was like, bummer. And so I was like, okay, I'm probably going to relieve Leah in the morning. I'll go to sleep and prepare for that. And then I woke up to it saying that you were completely dilated. I was like, wait, what? And so I was messaging Leah because I was like, well, I don't know if I'll make it before the baby's born, but I'll come anyways to help with postpartum and all that. And because I thought I might not even make it.
Right. And that's kind of how Leah was making it sound too. Going through the whole thing again with Andrew, like, okay, here's what you do when the baby's born. We were back in the tub, and I was like, okay, well, we're just doing this over again. And then she was not born.
How many times can you almost have a baby?
Right, exactly. And then I'm thinking like, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know what's going on. And at this point, I was thinking like, I'm really tired. How much longer is this gonna last? Like, there were definitely moments, like, it's not as though the whole entire time it was like I was not in like excruciating pain or anything like that. Like, there was a lot of like stopping and resting. And even when you got there, which we'll talk about in a second, there was a lot of like resting. So it was not kind of what you would imagine would it be happening for the whole like 24 or 48 hours, whatever. But it was definitely like a lot of stopping and starting, and she's going to be born and then she's not going to be born, that kind of thing. So you arrived, and even though in my head I was like, man, I thought she was going to be born by the time you got here, I was really grateful. Because another nice thing is that you and Leah have very different energies and different like approaches to certain things. So it was actually great because it came at a really good time where I was thinking like, she's never going to be born. And then you came and you're like, okay, we're just going to like start fresh. Like, we're just going to try some new things, which kind of perfect for not being discouraged. And so at that time, and that's when I met Sarah, because I had never met her before, which ended up being like so great that she was here. But you had said, why don't we see if we can get her positioned a little better? And so we were like we were like doing stretches basically. And I think you gave me like 4 or 5 like poses, and we did each one of them for 30 minutes, not like without moving in between, but on and off for 30 minutes and then move to the next one.
Yeah, they're like the spinning babies exercises.
Yeah, exactly. And that was really nice because I felt like I was able to do something. Whereas before, it was like feeling pretty good in the pool, the nice warm water, and we were like just working through, like passing the time, sort of. Whereas now I was feeling as though I could actively like do something to help instead of just sitting around.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really nice. And I think too, with like just having had so much experience with ballet and just different things, like being able to move and do something was really nice at that moment in time. So we did that. And I remember you saying after we did all of that, that had been very helpful because you could tell that she was like in a better position. So that felt really good. And another thing that I think was sort of a theme throughout the whole process was that anytime you or Leah suggested something, and I was initially like kind of hesitant, like, I don't know. But then afterward, I realized like that was a good thing to do. So that was a good lesson, I think. And maybe for people who are listening who are kind of like trying to gain strategies, just like going into a home birth, just being open to different options or like things that you didn't necessarily envision yourself doing, and just trusting that the suggestion is always worth trying, even if it ends up not being exactly what you thought. So that was good. So then I don't even know what time it probably was, probably like around noon or something like that by the time we were kind of finishing up with all of that. And then we decided that, was this kind of when we decided that we were just gonna try not being in the pool and being on the bed?
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Right. Yeah. So then we decided that, which, I was kind of like, man, like that's not really what I
Yeah, it's
had.
one of those things where we're like, one thing we haven't tried is basically what they do in the hospital,
Yeah,
that we
right.
usually advise against, but it is effective sometimes.
Right. And I remember that's exactly what you said. Like, I've seen people do this, and then the baby will be born in like 10 minutes after. So then I was thinking, like, okay,
You're
here's our
like,
time.
10 minutes sounds great to
That
me.
would be good. 10 minutes would be great. So then we ended up doing that, and she was not born after quite a while. I think you were saying something basically pretty similar to what Leah had said last time, where like, okay, we've been trying this for a little bit and we just don't want you to get super tired. Um, because at this point it's already been quite a while. And so we just took a little break. And then I remember it might have been right after, it might have been a little while after, you said, what if you take a Benadryl and try to go to sleep? And I was thinking like, so we have to start all over again. Like this would have been like the fifth time at least that I felt like in my head we're starting over. So that was kind of a bummer. And I don't think I actually ended up having it again because we were doing some other things by that point. Had like some essential oils going. There was
Because
like,
usually we're like, you can only really focus on one thing at a time, like either it's like hydration, IV food, that kind of thing, or it's rest and recoup and recovery, or it's progress and strengthening contractions and things like that. And I know we did some like tinctures and things because at one point contractions had really spaced out to like every 10 minutes. So we're like, either we take advantage and you try to rest, or we try to get them closer together, or.
yeah. Yeah. So the tincture was good, but it was another thing where I had to get used to the suggestion, right? Because you have to do something like knowing that you're ramping up, which at that point mentally was kind of difficult to
Well,
wrap
it's
my head
one thing to just like hold on for the ride and you don't really have control and it's just happening, but to like choose the intensity,
right.
like that is hard to say yes to.
Yeah, totally. And so we did that for a while. And then it was night again, basically. And we were deciding what we were going to do. And so I was trying to rest for a little bit. I think I rested in the shower for a little bit. I rested in the tub for a little bit. We refilled that tub so many times again that night. And I did another BT IV. And yeah, I think at that point I was just kind of resigned to the fact that like who knows, like she might be another 24 hours, we don't really know, and we're just doing what we can. And then, but I could also in my head realize like that I did have some ability to sort of like control how she was like descending. Remind me what, so there's like the -3, -2, -1. Remind me what that is measuring.
Yeah, so it's the station, it's the top of the presenting part, so her head, and it goes all the way from -4, not engaged the pelvis, to +4. Yeah,
Okay, yes. Because I remember we talked a lot about these numbers.
stations, yeah.
And so during the night, I could kind of like, after you had explained that to me, I could feel that happening as well. But it was more like she would be descending and then she would go back up, and then she would be descending and she would go back up. And because this was such a long process overall, I think I got pretty familiar with like feeling what she was actually doing just because there were so many hours. And so I could feel her doing that. And I remember talking to you about it, like, why do you think she keeps going back up? And we didn't really know. But at that same time, that's when I was really feeling like my back was like really, really hurting. So I knew there was like something like, I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I know there's something where what I thought was the process, which is what I was feeling at that first initial time when Leah first arrived and said she was about to be born, I could also tell like that's not what's happening now. Like now there's something a little different going on. So during that night, I was kind of just like feeling that. And she would like make some progress and then she would like go back up and then she would like make progress. And so it was very erratic overall. And then the next morning,
So
that
were
would be.
you ever through this process up to this point thinking about going to the hospital?
I asked you about it one time, but I also knew in my head like it sort of wasn't really an option just because of like how long it had already been. I knew that if I went, there was going to be like a whole list of things that were going to have to occur. And I was pretty determined to like not do any of that. So I think that was kind of like keeping me going. And like I said, there were definitely like times where would get discouraged and frustrated and wonder like why it was taking so long. But there were also those periods where there was time for like weirdly rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard when you're not there to see it because you could just imagine someone's like back-to-back contractions for days and days. And I know that was a thing for like your family too, who wasn't there and knew how long you were in labor for, and they were like worried and calling Andrew. And like sometimes it's not like just the birth and the birth team, but there's can be like external like things at play that can like add into the stress of it all.
Totally. And I think that if a person's only frame of reference is a hospital birth, it's hard to understand that it is really different. And there's a lot of just like holding time and like making space for things to just progress naturally. Whereas a lot of times in the hospital, there's a lot of like rushing going on for so many different reasons. And so if that's the only frame of reference that a person has, it's really hard to, I think, imagine like you're sleeping for 2 hours.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
I know. I remember being like, I'm happy to talk with them, or we could like send them a picture of you smiling, to show like
Yeah.
she's just miserable over here, like we were
Right, right.
laughing. Like Abby, your dog, would bring you a toy, and we would all laugh
Mhm,
about it. Like
mhm.
it was hard work, and we were like having a good time. I mean, I did.
No, I definitely did too. And there's moments of those days that I remember thinking like, wow, this is actually like kind of fun. Like it's a cool experience to have. And like you said, definitely hard, but it also feels as though it's hard, kind of like a really hard workout is hard, where it's hard, but you also have agency over what's going on. Like kind of like if you're doing a really hard workout and like half of the battle is like you're keeping yourself going, but you also know that you don't have to, like you could stop. And so it's like in that sense, it's also kind of fun because it's sort of like a competition with yourself where you're the person making the decisions. And there were a lot of instances where you offered so many different decisions, but I was always the person that could make them. And yeah, it's hard for somebody to envision what that's like if they're not.
Yeah.
So then around the next morning, around 9 would be when the next switch would take place. Leah was on her way back. And then I remember when she
Well,
arrived,
so how did that feel knowing we were going to switch again?
at
Do you
that point
remember?
I was like, whatever happens. At that point, the switch wasn't like a mentally difficult
Uh-huh.
thing to take in. And then when she arrived, again, she has a really different energy, which is good,
Mhm.
which is a good thing. And so she was more like talking with me, and she was saying like, how are you doing? She's very gentle, and she's very calm. And she's like, I'm a little worried that you might be tired. Yeah, I'm tired. And like 3 days I haven't slept. I'm tired. She's like, I'm just a little worried, like, that you might need some more energy, like, um, just a very like calming, like I'm here and I just want to make sure everything's okay, that kind of thing. And it all was okay,
Mhm.
like it was okay. But she said, like, one thing that you do have to know is because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think at this point is when she started to figure out that Jane was facing the wrong way. Is that when she?
We were guessing that she was more posterior.
Yes, yes,
Mhm.
exactly.
Mhm.
And so as she had sort of realized that, she like mentioned it to me, and then she said, you just should know that sometimes in this case, you might not be able to stay home. Like you might have to go to the hospital. And I was thinking like, well, it's been this whole amount of time, we've done all of this work. Like, is there a way we cannot go? And I said, well, I remember asking her, like, why would we need to go? And she mentioned that with this type of birth, that's when they use like the vacuum to
Yeah,
like pull.
sometimes a vacuum assist can help. Yeah.
And when she said that, I was like, there is no way. Because that was one thing that I was very sure that I did not want. And so as soon as she said that, it's like, okay, well, we just need to do whatever we need to do so that that's not what happens. And she said, okay, so I'm gonna go and like get everything set up, and then we're just gonna say that she's gonna be born in the next 15 minutes. And I was like, okay, that'll be great. Like, we just need to make this happen. And so again, like having that switch really, I think, was helpful because
Mhm.
it was just a new perspective for me. I know that you guys are all on the same page, but just things being presented a little bit differently. And then it kind of helps you to not have a fresh start, but just sort of like, I don't know.
Yeah, we hope to bring like, theoretically the midwife has had all night to sleep and can come with fresh idea, fresh energy, a new perspective, Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it was very helpful. And so I was in that nursery room, and she had come out and she was getting everything set up. And so Andrew and I were in the nursery room, and Amber, the photographer, was in there too. And by the way, she had been like amazing this entire time. Like she is not just a photographer, if
No.
anybody is interested in booking her. And actually, she just told me that she has started an apprenticeship with a midwife. Yeah, so she is going to be officially not only there as a photographer, but she was like amazing the whole entire time.
And she had home births, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
so it's nice to have somebody who like has been there themselves and gets it.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. And I hadn't met her before, but I felt like we just really like got to know each other very quickly somehow.
Mhm. Birth will do that, the intimacy of it,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so at that point, we were all in that nursery room, and Leo was like getting some things set up out in the living room. And you're like, okay, well, we're just gonna pray, and she's gonna be born in the next 15 minutes. Um, and I remember that being like a really nice moment where we just all kind of took a little break, and we just kind of went around and each person prayed. And I think Leah might have actually been there in there too for part of it.
She was, yeah.
Yeah. And so that was really nice, just knowing like, okay, this is our plan, and we've taken the time to like take a little breath, pray through it, and then we left the nursery room and came out into the living room, which was again not what I had planned. So that was like another instance of just, taking it in stride. But at this point, in the back of my mind, I had what she had told me about potentially like the vacuum and all of that stuff. And so I was like, okay, whatever, as long as we're here.
Yeah. Because you
Home.
envision you have the birth tub and you
Right.
envision the like beautiful scenery of it all. And then sometimes it's just like, well, how many times did you get in and out of the birth tub and the baby wasn't born? Like, let me try
Right.
something else.
Exactly, exactly. So we were just in the living room, but it was very cool because so Leah was there with Carissa, and then you and Sarah were still here. You hadn't left yet. And then Amber was here, and then obviously Andrew was here. So we were like all in the living room. So a lot of people. And she was born like within 15 minutes, I
Yeah.
think. So
Yeah.
it's exactly what we had kind of set up to do, and then also what we had like prayed to have happen. And that was like a really big relief because I think that was the only, when Leah had told me that about the vacuum and stuff, that was the only time where I was like, oh, because up until that point, I always thought, well, if we go to the hospital, it's going to be because I say that I want to go.
Mhm.
It had never really occurred to me. I mean, obviously I knew, but it had never really occurred to me that there could be a situation where we went not because I wanted to go. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? And so having that possibility was like, no, I'm not gonna do that after so long of like so much work. So yeah, that was really amazing that she was born just within 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And
And it was so sweet for all of us too, because especially when you tag team like that, I mean, we're always so invested in all the births, but like when you are really like invested in the birth because you've been there, and then to leave and be like, oh, I'm not gonna get to see the baby born, like, so it was really sweet for us all to get to be there and be a part of your triumph moment.
yeah, it was really great. And as I had mentioned earlier, there were so many moments throughout the whole thing that actually were strangely like fun.
Mhm.
Um, and were with each one of you, like Sarah and Carissa, all everybody. And so it was very special that everybody was there when she was born. And when she was actually like being born, it happened quick. So that was kind of shocking too. I kind of thought like I'll like see her being born, or like she will be, maybe like her head will be born and then I'll like see her head being born and then there will be like a little, like a little time and then the rest will be born, but it
She,
wasn't.
it was
It,
like once she got under a certain point on the birth stool, she just shot out. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it was quick. It happened
Yeah.
quick.
Do
And
you remember how many hours you pushed for off and on?
well, from when the first contraction that I called Leah, it was 63 hours. But
Yeah.
I don't know how long.
28 was pushing.
Yeah, so that's a lot.
And again, there was like pauses and, things like that. But yeah, from when you were complete.
And she was facing with her face up, right?
Yeah, sunny side up.
Yeah, when she was born. And so I think knowing that and then kind of even just like reading more about that, and it kind of explained a lot of what had been the process. And I kind of realized like, oh, this is why I was like feeling her go down and up. And it was kind of nice because it explained a lot for me. So it was kind of good to have sort of that like answer
Mhm.
of what had happened.
And then Leah, we celebrated for a little while and then I left. But my memory is that Leah talked with you a little bit about Pitocin just because of how long you were in labor for and the prolonged pushing and just that, like, let's keep an eye on this and keep it close by just in case your bleeding was more than typical.
Yes, she had mentioned that to me in the same conversation as the vacuum and going to the hospital. She
And
said,
kind
well,
of like got permission, like if like
yeah.
we know you don't want this and this is a different situation than prenatally. Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly. Right. Because in our conversations prior, we had always said, like, we're not going to do this. She said, I know you don't want to go to the hospital. So if this is the difference between going and not going,
Yeah.
would you be okay? And I said, well, I still would really prefer not, obviously. But, you know, at this point, what you need to do is fine.
Yeah.
So we didn't end up using it.
Yes, great.
So that was exciting.
But it
Um,
did take a little while for your placenta to come, yeah?
yeah, it took a little while, but I think more so because Leah just said, like, let's just rest for a little bit. Which was also really nice. Again, there was no rush, there was no hurry ever, um, to the whole process. So we did sort of just kind of like take a pause and we kind of just like let both me and Andrew have a few minutes to meet Jane and kind of catch our breath and that sort of thing. But yeah, it did take a while, but there wasn't a whole lot of like extra bleeding that actually ended up happening, which was great. I know that was something that Leah said could happen, but that was really good. And it was so nice because we were in the living room for a while and then we just slowly kind of made our way into the bedroom and we got like a whole station all situated. We were just resting in there. And I could see Carissa as she was doing all of the measurements, and it was really cool being able to see the placenta. Leah like showed it to us and showed us like different features of it, and it was very pleasant and relaxed, and again, like no rush, which I really appreciated, especially after so long.
Yeah. Do you
Being able,
remember how long it took your placenta to come out?
if I was gonna guess, I would say maybe 40 minutes.
3 hours.
Really?
I love hearing what mom's memory of the experience is,
Yeah,
what our
that's so
chart
funny.
says.
Yeah, I think at that
Time
point,
is
yeah,
weird postpartum.
yeah, it is weird.
Yeah, but
Um,
just like to point out, because like there is the increased risk of hemorrhage with long
mhm,
pushing and long labors, and the longer a placenta stays in, and it wasn't an issue, for you.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, it was good. It was fine. It felt very just not hurried, and I'm sure a lot of that should be attributed to Leah, just the way that she kind of like went through the whole process of that time, those few hours that she was here
Yeah.
afterward. It was really nice, just very peaceful.
Not making anything be bigger than it needs to be.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. Anything else in the immediate postpartum? Caring, anything else?
Yeah, that was another really great thing. There were so many great things about just being here and you and Leah. And I remember talking with Leah and she said, like, are you gonna be able to stay in bed for a while? Meaning like multiple days, like,
Mhm.
like days. And I said, yeah, like I'm gonna stay in bed. And she said, okay, like everything's gonna heal, which was so nice, right? Like just not, like you said, not making anything bigger than it is, especially after having like worked so hard for so long and just realizing like this doesn't have to be like a catastrophe. It's just like a normal thing. And so I appreciated that too, because that's another instance where, like, in a hospital, probably that whole conversation would have been so different. And at that point of just being so tired and still not really having eaten, Amber made me like this latte that was so good, but I still hadn't eaten. Just knowing, like, okay, we're just gonna not worry about it later because that's not the right way of putting it. But in my head, I was like, okay, we don't have to do that right now. Like we don't need to like solve this whole problem. Like we don't need to solve anything right now.
Yeah.
We're just resting right now. And so that was really nice. And in terms of like the few days after, I would say I felt very like good the few days after. Definitely like sleeping a lot. And it was great because that first night we did get a lot of sleep, which was nice. When Leah came back, I remember telling her like I feel like I got a really good night's rest. So that was all great.
Good. Yeah, and what about postpartum? Like, how was breastfeeding? How was healing your body? Any like complications that came up?
Healing was good. I really liked doing just even like on my bed, doing like some really, really simple, like just like breathing and like pelvic floor like classes. There were like these like 8 to 10 minute videos that I did, maybe starting a few days after, but it was like basically just like breathing and like mind muscle connection sort of thing. And that was really nice. That felt really good to me to be able to do that. Feeding her for the first few days was like so fun and so great. And when Leah came, it must have not been the first time she came. It must have been like a little bit after. she was like surprised at just like how much milk there was for Jane and how well she had been eating. And I was kind of surprised too that it was like so smooth, and I was really just like enjoying the whole thing. And that was probably for the first 5 days about. And then for some reason, feeding her started to get harder after the first little bit. And I think it was just because since it's my first time, I didn't know exactly what to look for in terms of like what would be her like latching really well. And she was always latching really well, I think, and she always really like loved eating. She would like cluster feed for like 4 or 5 hours sometimes. Like she was always felt very, very easy to soothe her because she just loved like nursing. And but it did become super painful for like the first 10 seconds every time I would feed her. And I know they say that, like that can happen. But in my head, I was like, this seems like a little more than what they say of like
Mhm.
pain the first 10 seconds. And I think probably just because she was like, her mouth was really small and just not being able to like fully latch on, like even though she was latching on, like not fully just because of the size of her mouth. Then I would start getting like bleeding, kind of like almost like skin is just kind of like coming off somehow. Like, and then once you start to get to that point, then it's really hard because it's not like anything can really heal, especially when she's eating for like, on and off for 4 hours at a time, right? Because every time it's just getting like damaged. And so then I was starting to feel like, okay, something has changed, and I don't know really what has changed. But that was another case, kind of like her birth, where I was so determined that this is the way we're going to do it that I was just like powering through. It's like, I don't, doesn't matter. Like, whatever it takes, we're doing it. And I had is it called Milk Moon? Um,
Like
there's
a
a
tincture?
yeah, that Andrew would bring to me like right when she was gonna eat, and I had it like almost every time. It's like a postpartum tincture, and that helped. And just like having like I would like be drinking like a lot of water, and like that always helped. And then I had this like hair tie on my wrist because it helped me remember like which
Mm.
side. And I just felt like every time I'd feed her, I would change the hair tie, and I was like, okay, that's one more done
Yeah.
until it's going to get better, because I knew it was going to get better. And
Mm.
everything that I was reading was saying, like, it's just going to take a few weeks and it's going to get better. I had
Well, it's
even,
interesting because they say like your birth sets you up for your parenting journey. And it's like if your birth taught you anything was, little by little, and eventually you'll be, in the home stretch.
yeah, yeah, totally. It's very similar. And I even reached out to a friend who I knew would have good advice. And she actually told me about the hair tie thing. And then she also said, on your calendar, circle 12 weeks from when your baby was born. And if you can make it 12 weeks, it's going to be fine. And I was thinking, like, 12 weeks? What are you talking about? That's so long. It feels really long when you're in like week 2, but
Yeah.
it's actually not that long. And we just powered through. Then around week 6, that's when you came back for another appointment and we weighed her. And the initial weight that Leah had done, she was gaining weight like so well. So she was born 7'3". And then when Leah weighed her, she was 7'13", I believe. And so Leah was like really amazed. She's like, wow, she gained so much weight in so little time. You're doing great. And that also really helped me because when I was powering through, I was like, you're doing great. She's gaining so much weight. And then when you came around week 6, we weighed her again. And at that point, she had not been gaining so much weight between those two, like between that interval, which obviously she had gained a little bit, but not much, which is not what you want. But I'm really glad that I hadn't done more frequent weighings. Like I'm almost glad I didn't know in a weird way because
Hmm.
I knew she was fine. Like I always knew she was fine. I was never concerned. She was really like calm, content, happy baby, always smiling, loved to nurse. She was never frustrated while eating. She was having like a great time. I would sometimes be thinking like, this is a lot, but she was always enjoying it. Like, and so I think I was able to power through because in my head I knew, oh, she's doing great. And then when we weighed her and she wasn't as much as we thought, I I wasn't super discouraged, honestly. Like, you also did a really good job again of like presenting that information and saying, like, here's some options you could consider. But I really didn't want to do anything drastic because, again, deep down, I knew she was fine. Like, if I had had any inkling of concern, like, if there had been any sign that,
Where
like,
you're like, this makes sense because I'm noticing this,
right.
and she's not satiated, and yeah.
Right, right. So yeah, if I had been like, oh, this explains a lot, then I would have like gone into problem solving
Yeah.
mode.
And we were kind of like, this is the extent we could do it. If we were going to go all out, like, let's get weight on this baby, like, this is what we would do. And all the way to just like wait and watch and keep an eye on things. And it's just like, how concerned are you,
Right.
and how quickly do you want her to gain?
Right. And again, feeling like I was the one who could, like Andrew and I were the ones who could make that decision was really nice. And I can imagine so many people where if the information was not presented as like calmly and thoroughly, because you had the time to really
Like your
present.
baby's failure to thrive. She's not,
Right.
like throwing
Yeah,
scary
yeah,
words.
exactly. And I would feel so sorry for somebody in that position who maybe is then persuaded to do something that they don't really want to do, or, it could like there's so many things that could happen for that to go differently. But I was so glad with how you presented it. And so the only thing that we ended up doing was getting a scale and we put it in her nursery and I would just weigh her for a couple weeks. We did every morning because I wanted to have, it can change so much. I wanted to have a more accurate like picture. And she was always like going up. Like she was going up slowly, but she was going up. And she was still doing great. I was still feeling pretty good. And the other things that I did was I really, really upped how much water I was drinking. Um, to probably like most days I was aiming for 120 ounces. I don't know like if I got there every single day, but that was like the goal. And then and I sent you the link to it, the tincture, like the lactation tincture from that same company,
Hmm.
the Milk Moon company. So I was doing that, and I think that also maybe helped. I don't know. But then right after that week and a half mark, when you came back, and she was still kind of going up, but slowly. Like right after that appointment, she just started like shooting up.
Yeah.
Like,
It was a huge shift within a couple weeks. Yeah.
yeah, it was like that was just her time to grow. Like at that point, because when I was doing all the water and the tinctures and everything, she was still just going up kind of slowly. So it wasn't like I changed anything and then because of the change, shot up. She just like shot up and she was gaining, and I think even up to this point, even now, and she's now 4 months, she was gaining more than an ounce a day, like when I was averaging out
Yeah.
the weights.
Yeah, because
And
she was born like 52 percentile, went down to as low as the eighth percentile. And at least last I plugged it in, she was in the 48th percentile.
yeah,
Uh,
and I'm
yeah,
sure she's probably higher than that now.
probably.
She's gaining weight like, I don't know. Yeah, she, yeah. And now I'm getting, which is funny to me because Andrew and I are both, we're like not tall, neither of us.
Mhm.
And now I'm getting like comments from people when they ask like, "Oh, how old is your baby?" And I tell them how old she is. And they're like, "Wow, she's really big." Because neither of us are, and for
Yeah.
some reason she wasn't,
Uh-huh.
and just
They're like,
never.
thank you. We've been working hard.
Right, exactly. So that's great. And I think another really good lesson to take away from the whole process of similar to how she was born, like not panicking and realizing that it can take time. And if it does, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. Now, I know obviously in maybe a different situation, a baby like not gaining weight, it could be something totally different. But
Right.
in our case, I knew it was okay and I knew everything was going to be fine. And I'm so glad that we were able to just take a little break again and say, we're just going to give it some time, see how it goes. And then, yeah, I would have been kind of sad if we went to like an extreme measure. And obviously, you can never know like the what ifs, but if we had gone to like an extreme measure and then I realized like that wasn't really necessary, I think I would have felt really sad. And so I'm happy with how everything went.
If there was a first-time mom listening to this, what advice would you give her?
I would say be confident in the decisions that you have made around how you want your baby to be born and how you want to spend especially those first few weeks. And so know what those big items are, like know where you're not going to compromise, but then within that also be flexible and know that you can reach that goal maybe in a different way than you thought.
Yeah, because we really can control, for the most part, like where we choose to birth and who we choose to birth with it, but how that unfolds is going to be a mystery, and yeah, to have flexibility.
Right, right. And I think it's so important that the people that you're going to choose are willing to give that flexibility, right? Willing to let you be the person making the decisions in the end, and supporting you with those decisions. Yeah, it was just such a blessing, you and Leah, just your whole approach to every step in the process is very like there's never going to be a panic. There's never going to be like you need to know now and you need to do this now, and there's always the time to figure out what you're going to do and then adjust if you need to adjust, but never feel pressured into making adjustments, you know?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your journey. If anyone wanted to reach out to you, I had questions for you. Do you have any contact you can leave for people? We could leave it in the show notes.
Sure. Yes, I can give you my Instagram link and then people message me there for sure. Yeah, I would love to talk with anyone, especially a first-time mom or a first-time home birth, and just talk more about my experience because it's really easy to think like what you see online is how it's always going to go. And so I think it's good to hear stories that are different than maybe that like romanticized view.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe. If you'd like to follow along, you can find us on Instagram at Born Wild Podcast and Facebook. You can go to our website at www.bornwildmidwifery.com. See you later.